The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, Medicine for These Times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. So I'm going to cut to the chase here. I have a group business coaching intensive program that is open now. It will start in early April, and it is a 7-week program. It's one of the lowest investment programs that I offer. And it's an amazing group coaching program designed to help get your business off the ground. Whether or not you have a business or you're already in business and you just want more clients, doesn't really matter. This program is designed for both people without a business and people with a business. But if you feel stuck and you feel that you are having trouble getting in clients or don't know what to do next or don't even know where to start, then this program is for you. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I am so honored to be having Acacea Sherman-Lewis joining us today. Hi, Acacea. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for having me.
I can't wait to get in it. We were just talking a little bit off camera how I just came back from the beautiful city of Oaxaca in Mexico, and you have a lot of roots and work going on down there, and I can't wait for the audience to hear more about this. But let me tell a little bit about your bio, and then we'll get into your story. So Acacea is a researcher, world traveler, teacher, and conscious explorer of inner realms. She is the founder of the entheogenic School for Cultural Anthropology and Ethnobotanical Studies called Divine Master Alchemy. Her goal is to be a bridge between Western philosophy and religion and the non-Western ontological metaphysics of animistic and polytheistic entheogenic traditions through storytelling, research, and exploration of traditional modes of entheogenic use in varied settings. Her focus is to help expand access to and the understanding of mushroom traditions and their link to bettering our understanding of ourselves and the world that we live in. And you can check out all her links right here in the show notes, and we'll have a link to her social media and other programs. But Acacea, I always love to hear your story, both you as a researcher, as an educator, as an entrepreneur, and also as an explorer of these inner realms. What was your path? How did you get into this? And, did you know you were going to be on this path when you were 7 years old?
Actually, there was a hint. I went to college with my dad, and he was continuing his education when I was still a preteen and like 8 or 9 years old. And I remember Googling my name on the internet because I knew it was kind of a strange name and feeling like, why does it keep telling me it's misspelled? And so I corrected the quote unquote spelling for Google, to Acacia, and there's this tree, that my mom would tell me stories about. She'd tell me it's, the Ark of the Covenant. This is also called Shittim wood in Hebrew. My mom knew more about what my name meant than the internet did when I was a kid. So later on, I was like, well, I wasn't finding what my mom said until I was like 15 or 16, until Google became like more fleshed out, and then 90s Google and 2000s Google is not the same Google that we have today. And so, I think around that same time, DMT started popping up, the word DMT, but not much about it. Not much about it other than the fact that it was a scheduled substance. And I was curious about this scheduled substance and its effects. Before that, though, I was studying all things meteorology, all things geology, all things botany. And so because I was homeschooled, my parents wanted to set me up for success by letting me to explore whatever I really wanted to learn, but in an academic fashion. And so I would go to the library and get hundreds and hundreds of books and just read pretty much nonstop. And that's partially how, the school was born. I married someone who was also a botanist. My partner, Mike/Malati, passed away in 2021. And we started Divine Master Alchemy together based on our love of botany, culture, anthropology, the context behind all these things that people see on their trips, but don't really know how to process the different interactions that can be had between human and plant, human and animal, human and ancestor, and what that really meant for us, at that time. And so part of my story is just, I'm a girl who just loves to learn, and I love to create bridges for deeper learning. I'm a curious person, so when people try to make information difficult to obtain, that's where I hunt the most. And entheogenically, societies that worked with entheogens, religions that have an entheogenic basis, that's where you find secrets. And the secrets are generally the taboo use of hallucinogens. And that's what just excites me. Like, ooh, did you just get this out of thin air, or did you have an experience? And if you had an experience, how did you capture that? How did you narrate that for future generations? And what does it look like now for you to try to teach this without utilizing the original technique? And if you're still teaching this, did you really capture the essence of it? Or are you still kind of tongue in cheek, like telling people it exists, but I can't tell you where it exists? Divine consciousness is all around you. It's in you. You're not separate from it. But most people coming into this world being taught that God's a guy in the sky, or that plant's just an object, have no real way to experience this outside of the hallucinogenic world. Deep meditation or some kind of profound near-death experience. And I've experienced it through all modalities, even just dreams. And so that's my passion. And yeah.
I love it. By the way, I love that you were homeschooled. That's always it's always so interesting. Because I've interviewed a handful of people who've been homeschooled that really like forged their own path on this, just kind of this obscure direction of maybe what was not norm at the time, especially not in our, especially here in America in our school system, right? You probably wouldn't be reading about entheogenics and religion in fourth grade.
Yeah. And I went to college with my dad, so I actually got to test out of high school, most of it, and I went straight into college as an 11-year-old. And so I went and studied astrophysics after that. And that was really just because I wanted to do something challenging. I was like, all this stuff's kind of lame. I just want to go experience a challenge. And I was challenged, but not academically. I was challenged financially because my degree plan was a 6-year degree plan and I had a 4-year scholarship.
Oh, yeah.
And so part of that was leading me to entheogens, and it came in the weirdest way. Basically, I was in a really bad relationship. I had hit rock bottom. I ran out of financial aid, enlisted in the military. During that bad breakup, I was going through a severe depression and a lot of anxiety. And someone gave me mushrooms when I was 16. And that was my first gateway experience into deeper connection and realization with this Unitarian, non-dual type of consciousness that I had read about in the Bible, didn't really have a relationship with, and then all of a sudden it was knocking on my heart's door like, hey, wake up, you're okay. Oh, really? I've been okay this whole time? Why didn't somebody tell me that this thing existed before? Oh, right, you did tell me. You just told me about it differently than I'm experiencing it now. So, that helped me to build my relationship with the I am consciousness and with myself, and being curious about why no one ever told me about it up until that point really became my fuel for what I do now. So
thank you so much for sharing. I love that story. 16 given mushrooms. You probably like me. I was 14. I did not know I was given acid, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. I had heard about it, but had no idea. And then it's like, oh, interesting. And I remember because I was actually alone during the entire trip, and my first thought was like, wait a second. I don't think they're telling us the capability of our minds. Like, what? This tiny little thing? It's like, I actually, it's interesting. There's a lot of conversation now around, teenagers or people doing this at a young age, which, to me, I am so thankful I did it at a younger age because it definitely took me on a better trajectory than I probably would have gone in. And of course, everybody's like, no, teenagers shouldn't have this. But I actually wonder if this is a helpful time to be having that kind of experience.
Well, I mean, and traditional Aztec philosophy and even today in like Zapotec traditions, if the parent is working with an entheogen, like Maria Sabina learned from her father, and so we don't really take into consideration that in many indigenous traditions, this is something that children are introduced to. Like, let's take the Amazon, for example. You're in Peru, or you've been to Peru. When it comes to working with ayahuasca, many children are not given ayahuasca first, but they're given piri piri, which is a derivative of the Cyperus articulatus grass, which contains ergo fungus in its rootstock. And so when a child is born, in certain Shipibo traditions, the first drops that into their eyes isn't sananga, thankfully. It's piri piri, which means we're to focus better, or kanastawa, to build kanastawa, which is to focus better. And it helps them to see the patterns inside of reality. And it contains trace amounts of LSA. So it makes me wonder, have ancient societies been microdosing their children all along to help pass these gifts of awareness? And if so, if we go back even further than that, to the Eve gene, in Africa, many different African traditions have involved the use of psilocybin mushrooms. Even from the time that there were pygmies in trees 5.4 million years ago, our earliest ancestors crawling out of the trees onto the sub-Saharan plains of Africa. Some people call it the stoned ape theory, but it's really the stoned little man. And, they find mushrooms as a tool to not only increase their ability to defend themselves from predators, i.e. it makes you faster, helps you to see further, and perceive with higher visual acuity things at a distance. So it would have been a master tool for the early human. And so I think all of us have this ancestral link to our own evolution, like the great jump 40 million years ago where our hippocampus size, quadrupled. We've got to remember that this is a tool for not only our exploration, but for our very evolution.
Yeah. It was so funny. I remember many years ago, one of the people I work with in Peru reminded us all animals, in his broken English, all animals alter their consciousness. It's like just in our nature. And it's so interesting to be human, especially here in this, this Western world that we live in, where there's this limitation, right? There's now laws, and it's illegal, or you get in trouble, or you just get shunned by society. Less so now, but maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was kind of like you were just the weirdo. At least when I was growing up, it was like, oh, the weird kids that do drugs. So,
well, there's one thing I do want to speak on. It's like Westerners in general, we are post-colonial, explorers. And so if you go back to Oaxaca, like we were talking about previously, and you look at the history of colonization in the 1500s by the Spaniards, the Spanish found many people who are willing to give their lives protecting mushroom traditions, and like the stelas of Xochicalco that clearly show the ingestion of mushroom use as a critical part of Aztec realization, philosophy, poetry, and society, as being covered up. It's almost as if someone wanted to hide these stelas from the invaders because they were just thrown into the temple of Quetzalcoatl, basically thrown through a hole in the ground and shattered, and then when the invaders finally found them and put them together, they were like, oh, well, I guess they were attacked before the Spaniards came, and they tried to hide this information even back then, because the Spaniards found it like that, you know? And so what's interesting to me is that when you have traditions that were coveted or sacred or secret, a lot of them were hidden before the invasions could ever begin. And so we deal with this taboo now of post-colonialism, where we, benefiting from colonization in the West, have to decompartmentalize the stories that we've been told in an effort to protect this information from ever being released to the masses, and learn to respect and revere these traditional techniques as something more than just a metaphysical or hallucinogenic drug. You know, the way that ancient cultures looked at reality is so different than how theoretical physics and Western physics looks at reality, even on a molecular scale. If you just look up theoretical physics on Wikipedia, it's based on the theories of Plato and Aristotle, etc., as having explored the known universe, as being the only explorers who thoroughly question the nature of reality and physics. And we know that that's not true. It's not just the West who did this, you know, in 900 BC, you know, that they're stating. It was also the Aztec. It was also the ancient Vedic and pre-Buddhist explorers, you know, who had theories of how reality worked, and also African explorers who had theories of how reality worked that included consciousness as a state of matter, you know, and that's something that we look at CERN right now in Geneva, Switzerland. Coming from physics, most of my colleagues who I went to college with work at CERN, and I'm the only one who's out here talking about psychedelics and the existence of a subparticle personality of the Godhead, you know, which is in alignment with many of the traditions I study. And so, you know, I think that's why partially it's so taboo, is because it wakes you up to something that's alive in your reality. People see eyeballs on the wall, and they feel like they're being watched by everything that exists. And technically, according to these traditions, you're eating the flesh of God. Tiona Nacadol directly means the flesh of the gods, and that's the name for the mushroom. And so you're eating something in duality that connects you with non-duality. Of course, it's going to be freaky and weird and cause everybody who wants to utilize dualism as a hierarchical tool, like kingships, governments, even certain religions, feel threatened by it.
Yeah, I'm like everything in our reality, it seems.
Yeah.
I mean, everything stems back to the disconnection.
Someone could wake up and realize they could be king too. You know?
We've got to stop that, though. That's a threat. Massive threat to our world. It's interesting because I want to ask you about your work, but now that you bring this up, you know, so my dad was actually a metallurgical engineer working in nuclear power, and it was interesting because I come from this family of like science. Science is it. There's no other questions. But later in life, we started to have these discussions, and my dad got into, you know, theoretical physics, and actually was a big reader of ancient philosophy. And I had found a book after he died with some underlines in it that I forgot who it quoted. Maybe you would know. It quoted a Greek philosopher that said something about essentially it just said all is made up of love. And my dad had to underline it in this book. And I was like, wait, so on some level, there is this bridge of like science and philosophy where I think people, you know, a lot of people do know this, what we believe or what I might believe to be this truth, that all is one, that there is, you know, it's like the truth of the universe. But our world, or at least in this kind of Western world that most of us were raised in, or I was raised in, was like, oh, science is the only way. There is no other way. This is the proof that we have. This is what the research says. Do you wonder what's going to happen maybe in our lifetime, if there is going to be more of this combining of science and, you know, like the metaphysical of, you know, more and more scientists maybe having their views?
That's what I want to do. You know, I went to school for astrophysics, and I have every intention of finishing my degree. And for me personally speaking, I wanted to be the bridge when I was 16 of science and religion. I actually applied for an engaged learning opportunity with a doctorate in theology at my university and my astrophysics professor. And they told me I was crazy. They said they're not ready for that. They're never going to be ready for that. Now, what's ironic was I just spoke on the same stage as that same theology professor from SMU in Vancouver at Spirit Plant Medicine at SPMC. And you know what he told me after my lecture was done? He said, this was the best lecture that I listened to at this conference. And you know what? That gives me hope. Because when it comes down to it, I spent years feeling like, oh, well, the people, that I want to study under would never want to study what I want to study. And that's consciousness research as a state of matter. And we want to jump to this whole idea of oneness. But if we don't understand the underlying mechanics, then we just jump to spiritual bypassing, And so it's going to take for us to understand first, how is the creator not separate from the created? What is a quote unquote creator? And if creation has been going on infinitely, it's the beginning and the end happening simultaneously, then does time even exist the way that we think it does? Was there ever a beginning to begin with? And if we're not separable from infinite knowledge, then how come nobody's talking about it? And then they're going to find out, yes, but those people were taken out, from Jesus of the Bible to Abhinavagupta and Kashmiri Shaivism being covered up by the Hare Krishna movement. And so we have many, 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 many different points where in this world we've had leaders come up and say, look, this divine energy that is inside of us, that is love, that is compassion, that is all of the good things, it's all around us, and it's only separated from our minds. We can feel it with our hearts, but in our minds, we have this block. You can work on this block by just chipping away at it and then reach enlightenment, and you'll be in a blissful state. And people are like, you're crazy. And they're like, but just try it. And so we get stuck at the but you're crazy and just try it line that people draw. And I think that, whether it's Christianity, Taoism, Islam, all of these religions come from a place of highlighting the most beautiful aspects of humanity, which we can all agree on are all the desirable aspects, the all attractive aspects. And, even Yogananda said, to God, love is like a magnet. The second that you start to love, God is attracted to it. And I wonder if that is also like a law of physics, and we talk about manifestation. We talk about the law of attraction as this metaphysical law, right? But if you go deeper into the Vedas, you find out that Shiva was actually described as kind of a proton shell, like creating and destroying as it goes, as an activity of the Godhead. And then you have Brahma as the personality for all human beings. All beings on the planet were created by this Brahma figure on an infra particle, which is like an electron shell. And then you have a neutron, Vishnu, which makes up everything that exists. And so you see particle physics, in different areas of ancient Vedic thought and philosophy. And it makes you wonder, gee, what would happen to physics if this quantum action at a distance were explained by the unexplainable? That would mean that science would also have to look into some of the religious origins of scientific thought. As a matter of fact, the concept of zero wouldn't exist if it weren't for people of India and Vedic mathematicians. Zero is a religious concept. Zero does and doesn't exist. It doesn't actually exist. There's really no such thing as zero. We even found out that the smaller you go on the infraparticle, you find this quantum foam that inhabits everything. You can never get small enough to where nothing literally doesn't exist. Nothing is really an illusion. And so if there's no such thing as nothing, and the smaller and smaller we go, there's more and more infraparticle information that we just don't have the tool to find out about. There's a chance that there might be an intelligence inside that quantum space that we're just not able to connect with our scientific instruments. But these same people see this stuff on ayahuasca. They see the energy. They see that this light that is smaller than a molecule. They see this energy moving through them. They feel it. They can communicate with it. And many people who work with mushrooms, many Qigong experts or Taoist travelers will tell you the same thing, that if you sit and you forget what you are, and you do Zhuang, which is a sitting and forgetting meditation, you're going to eventually start to encounter this infinite, omnipresent space, that they even call the Tao. And even in Buddhism, it's even saying that the Buddha is created. You're creating the Buddha. The Buddha, all of the thousands of deities in Tibet don't actually exist. You're creating them through the power of your devotion, through the power of your faith and joy in deity yoga. Even when you create a yidam, the yidam is also inseparable from you. And so it's talking about this both and energy, this not two, but both and type of energy that we encounter in the psychedelic space. And so I think through context, when people study the context of these traditions, you don't have to tell anybody what to believe. They can make their own conclusions logically and rationally through their own experience with this intangible force, And I think that's where the beauty lies, because the more we try to tell people we're one, the more you're going to have spiritual bypassing. But if we let people draw that conclusion based on their own interaction with their awareness, then it's better than telling them anything, because then it's a firsthand experience between that and that which they are made of. And then the knowledge isn't lost on theory of we're one. The knowledge is applied in activity towards all human beings, treating others the way that you'd like to be treated because of the natural law that you've suddenly become aware of. And then you actually have a change of behavior rather than just a spiritual jargon being used.
I mean, I listen to you speak and all I can think is, wow, imagine all the world's problems being solved with this. I mean, it's like
I do too.
Yeah,
I think about that.
Simple.
I mean, I even think that it's compatible with government. It's compatible with law. It's compatible with the VA. I mean, we've got so many veterans with PTSD. Can you imagine veterans actually having access to safe and holistic psychedelics that in the right environment, they realize that they are inseparable from their creator and they can't die. So if you're sitting here guilty and sad and torn up because you've committed murder for your country, and you feel like there's no other way for you to exist but non-existence, you have to kill yourself, and then you realize, if I do that, then I'm just going to come back again in a different form. And the people who died, they signed up for that. That was their dharma. That was their choice. And then, rather than bypassing it and just saying, oh, you're going to be okay, time heals all wounds. No, they connect with their creator and they see that part of their lesson was volunteering to do that stuff that they felt was horrible, but they're able to be consoled by the compassion of their creator and forgiveness that really exists. And that forgiveness brings peace instead of madness. And a lot of people are looking for that peace, but they can't find it outside of themselves. They can't find it doing drugs. They can't find it on ketamine. We love ketamine. And you can forget everything there is and enjoy ketamine, but when you come off the ketamine high, it's still there. And so a lot of people are able to integrate using ketamine, which I think is wonderful during meditation. But honestly, you don't need a substance to have this experience. You just have to learn to open your heart and feel, let love in, really, in the place of whatever it is that's blocking it. And I think that psychedelics like ayahuasca and mushrooms and other natural plant medicines help to guide the person into that space rather than just flinging them into the absolute and saying swim.
Which can happen, but it's funny. We could get into a totally different discussion about ketamine because I personally have mixed feelings about it altogether. I very rarely actually platform people about ketamine for various reasons.
Same. It's because of the addictive quality of it,
Oh, I have story after story. I mean, what I've seen over the years, and I'm like, I'm
glad this is a safe space.
I wonder why this is the more legal one. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't
Dissociate.
require any spirituality to have an effect.
Yeah.
I think that's partially it, is that it can be taken and administered in highly controlled groups, and they can say that it's safe because it doesn't have a history of killing people, but it's also a disassociative.
Yeah.
And we already have a long history of disassociatives being abused. I think we're just at the beginning of seeing the long-term effects of legalization of ketamine.
I agree. I always tell this story. I've now met a handful of people who say they do ketamine therapy, and then they tell me they do it once a week, and they're spending like $90,000 to $100,000 a year on ketamine therapy. And I'm like,
that's like life support in the hospital. Like, you may as well be in spiritual hospice.
That's why I was like, I think that's actually just an addiction. I don't know if
makes the ayahuasca retreats look cheap. I would much rather to go to Peru or go to Oaxaca or just, I don't know.
It's crazy.
Fly to the Netherlands for that.
It's crazy what's going on out there. Okay, speaking of which, because I want to get into this, by the way, I do want to say you pointed out one beautiful line that was just so relevant for everything in the world today about the compassion, the love, the open your heart, and not looking externally. Because this kind of just sums up the world that we're in today. So I just want to point that out for everybody, because I'm constantly talking about that there's so many people either turning to the external for answers, including the psychedelic that will fix everything. Yeah. And it's been so interesting, this space, just to witness the amount of people that are like, oh, okay, I haven't figured it out and I don't want to deal. So let me try this. I heard this will just fix things overnight. And it's like, well, no.
No, I mean, the best thing that my teacher ever told me, Kalindi E., he was the one who was doing high doses and traveling the world talking about psychedelics. The best thing he ever told me in the time that I knew him was look internally for answers. To look internally for answers. And I think that's what we're most afraid of. We're afraid that we don't know. And we don't really want to admit we don't know. But it's when we admit we don't know that we let knowing in. We let the answer find us, and I think that's a voluntary ego death that a lot of people have to take. It takes you a while to get to that point of surrender where you're okay with just not knowing the answer and letting something bigger than you in. And you're afraid that something bigger than you will punish you because you've heard that it's going to punish you or it's going to hurt you. And that it's gonna send you to hell or whatever, and people go through this like fear loop, And the beautiful thing about Aztec philosophy is that in the first mushroom ceremonies, the journey of the deified heart is what is called. The initiate will go through a path where he's going to meet like the god of death, and the god of death is going to test him and be like, "Yo, you're gonna die. That your road ends here, buddy. Sorry." And he's got to take that guy's head and cut it off. He's got to say, "Okay, dude. I know that you're here. I know that you're my fear, but right now you're not protecting me. Right now you're keeping me from liberation. So right now it's time for you to go, and a lot of people don't address their fear first. They address it through therapy. They address it through trying to cover it up, trying to self-soothe. But if you go inside and you deal with that fear of being wrong, that fear of the psyche collapsing, if you just surrender to the psyche and let it reset itself, then you open yourself up to a whole realm of possibilities that could have never taken place. Even psychologically, like this has been shown, again and again in different tests and scenarios involving psychedelics, that when the default mode network of the brain collapses, there's a potential for you to create new neuronal pathways that would not have otherwise been there if you had just taken, a microdose, for instance, and not even tried.
It's so funny because who was it? Someone I interviewed a couple of years ago, I said, yeah, why? Here's the thing. Who am I to judge? I really try to keep a neutral space, but so much of our society is praising microdosing. And I'm like, I think it's good for certain reasons. And I have had the real healing has been from the initiations. And I think if you ask anyone who's been on this path for a while, it's like the hard, deathly, I can't even tell you the amount of times I've died
Yeah, I've died by lightning strike.
Like,
I've died by falling off an underwater cliff in my trips. It's been insane. But the point is, we died, right?
Yeah.
We died.
That's why I'm
When did
like,
you die?
I don't know why people aren't talking about the macrodose more. And so I love interviewing people that are like, yes, actually, this is where the
Even
real
the Bible says I die daily. Like, I mean, that's I think that's why Christianity is so powerful, because you have a lot of people who are trying to like take up their own cross and sacrifice the self. Like people who are really like passionate about Christianity, not just the folks who go to church on Sunday, but the people who are trying to practice this. It's almost like an ego death religion.
Christ consciousness. Yep.
Yeah, and then you go in and you see how it's abused, and then you see also even Hare Krishnaism is abused. But for people who are actually authentically practicing, it's like the old ladies who sit on the front pew who wear white hats and white gloves, and they're so special and so kind and so sweet. And you're wondering how do you exist amongst all of this hatred, amongst all of this confusion, amongst all of these people who are questioning their own religion, meanwhile proselytizing many people and trying to indict them of sins that they probably haven't even committed. And even if they have, it's not really their job to. And you've got this one little old lady at peace, dressed in white on the front pew, saying, God's been good to me. She gets gratitude, And it's that gratitude that comes after that death that I feel like really helps to transmute all of the other negative crap that's inside of us. That really helps us do our shadow work. Is inside of that gratitude, being able to face the darkness and understand that the darkness is divine too. Yeah. It has a place.
Like our entire world right now. I mean, I say this all the time. I'm like, this is just look around. It's like this gigantic collective initiation. But instead, a lot of people are just like, oh, well, let me cancel you on social media. Let me be mean to you. Let me cut off friendships. I have so many friends who've lost friends in the last 6 months over the war. And it's just it's so heartbreaking, where it's like, wait a second. I think everybody's missing the point here. It's like, yes,
this is a collective initiation for sure. I love how you put it that way, because it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter whether you do psychedelics or not. We've gone through a full plague, a full mass death with COVID. We're seeing mass wars, crazy natural disasters. And in the midst of all of this, you have people saying you're not compassionate enough because you didn't make a post on social media. And this is really the point where people who are talking about compassion and people who are practicing compassion are moving on different sides.
That I've noticed. That's been actually very interesting. The ones that are really walking the walk are not like making reels about it every 5 minutes. And the ones who are canceling, I'm like, my friend Simon, who's also in this psychedelic space, who's an amazing writer, wrote this just heart-wrenching article about this. And it was just so on point. But yeah, this is where I'm like, are you guys not learning the lessons from these medicines in the first place? So then I'm wondering, like, why are you guys all doing this?
They're doing it to say that they're doing it. It's like a collective ego trip / narcissism trip. That's why, when I initiate as an upasika in Buddhism, they have you take a whole year before you take the psychedelic and just start to cultivate like a right action, right state of mind, right compassion, right diligence, right ethics. You've got to do the eightfold path before you can do all the fancy Vajrayana stuff where you're turning into a deity and stuff. You've got to ground yourself on the basic precepts that you're not going to do. You're not going to try to do spirituality for profit. You're not going to try to steal from somebody. You're not going to make yourself bigger than other people. You've got to remain humble, and recognize that we are all, part of this experience, and that nobody gets liberated until everybody gets liberated. And a lot of people do psychedelics at high dose, especially because they want recognition. I can't tell you how many messages I get a week that are just like, hey, I did 15 dried grams. And I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? And they're like, what? Of course I'm okay. I did 15 dry grams. I'm like, no. I mean, why did you just do that? Like, we're not out here telling people to just go and do 15 dry grams. before they've done one. And they're like, oh, well, I saw you in my trip and you saved me or something.
I get that one.
Or even worse, I saw you and I think I know you from a past life. And it's like, ground yourself, ground yourself, please. Don't just jump into these
oh my God
trips and then spiral into the abyss, clinging to the quote unquote savior mentality that you have in your head, which just so happens to plinko into my inbox, and you're missing the point. Yeah. The dose is not the point. Yeah. The psychedelic is not the point. The point is to observe and witness your inner truth. And it has nothing to do with anybody else. We're not going to validate you. We're not going to applaud you. We're not going to give you candy or a 5-star badge to say, boom, you're spiritual now.
I did the 5. I did the 10.
I know. It's not something to just check off your bucket list, And so when we bring them into the context of how these traditions initiated people, a lot of people have to look inside and say, look, I haven't dealt with my fear, and taking a high dose isn't going to fix this. I need to sit and just deal with my fear regular. Like, learn how to sit with my discomfort and my anxiety. And the only way it's going to get better is if I choose to do it. No one else can do the work for me. Not the shaman, not the ayahuasca, not the rapé, not the cambo. Oh it's only going to get better if I sit through the discomfort and just make the hard decision to connect. And it's not really a hard decision if you don't think it's a hard decision. If you think it's a hard decision, it's going to be hard. But if you think differently about it, if you change your mental voice to say, I am love, and you meditate on words of affirmation that make it easier for you to get into a calm and peaceful, relaxed state, trusting that the word has power, trusting your inner nature, and not thinking so hard with the mind about how to connect with spirit, but opening the heart to let spirit in. That's something that I really recommend, and you don't need anything to do that,
Tell that to every psychonaut. Just sit quietly. Like, very simple things. And people are like,
I got ADHD, I got autism.
No, exactly.
That's what I said once. I've already made the same excuses they're making. So when they make the excuses, I'm like, no, you don't get to. No, not today.
Even the hape, I was just telling someone, I was like, no offense, anyone who lives in Austin. I have some amazing friends there. And I was like, Austin just seems to represent this. It's like 1 minute without hape. And I'm like, can you not go a day without hape?
They don't even know what the plants are in the hape. I remember when I first came onto the scene like 8 years ago in hape, like we actually knew who the rapé masters were. The name of the rapé actually corresponded to a location or area where the rapé was found. And at least 2 or 3 people doing the rapé could tell you, okay, Virola has DMT in it. Or Sunu is one of the most sacred trees. And this is utilized for inflammation in the nose or the nostril. Or this one has Kumaro in it. Don't do too much, because if you do too much, it'll give you cancer. We knew some basic stuff. And now today, people are just getting bottles of powder and shooting it like it's it's a cigarette.
Like Coke.
Like Coke. Sometimes the rapé has Coke in it. Like, we don't even talk about that. It has Coke in it, at least.
Oh, God.
Especially the green ones.
Oh, my God. Coca. Yeah, Coca. I'm like, oh, God.
We love Mama Coca, but at the same time, if you put coca and cacao bark and Virola together, you're basically doing like a drug. You've drugified it, Oh
my God. Well, let's talk about the work that you do, because I'm fascinated by this. I've been watching you out there and, seeing other people interview you, and saw your school come out recently, or maybe that was just the first time I saw it. But let's talk about, what is it you're doing out there in the world? And are you still doing this, astrophysics research? What do you do for your living, let's say, out here in the world of capitalism?
Well, I generally charge like $4 an hour for what I do. And that's how it's been for 5 or 6 years. And it started with a mushroom trip where I said, well, if you want me to teach, and this is back before Kalindi died, he asked me to start teaching about the transdimensional crystals that he worked with. And at that time, I was also teaching ethnobotany. Now, I've been very private. I don't advertise for what I do. It's all word of mouth. And if they hear it on a podcast and they look into it, they can find a little bit about it. But I keep it pretty private because I want to attract real learners. I don't want to attract people who want a certificate. I don't want to validate their shamanic fantasy. Look, I've got a shaman hat too, but that doesn't make me better than you.
I actually had a video go viral like in 2016 or 17 where I wrote a certificate on a notebook and I held it up to the camera and I said, here's your certificate. It went viral. And I'm like, my only viral video, everybody's like up in arms over the certificate.
Exactly how I feel. God. I've had students that have been learning from me for 5 years plus, and I try to create a university type atmosphere. When you come to class, you will get assignments. These assignments are going to require you to use logic, not just your feelings, I had one syllabus one year that was 3 pages long for a 6-month long class, global plant medicine. And we go from every continent, we study 5 different points, 5 nexus points. We study the medical, the Western ontological, undergraduate, PubMed, certified, NCBI, JSTOR research, the hard stuff. And I teach them how to do research as an undergraduate. And we go through like how to use Google Boolean language, how to actually narrow down the words and the conclusions and make it make sense. Like, give me a thesis. Don't just give me your 1 second Google search answer. I'm going to show you how to write about the plant. Then we study the ethnobotany, which generally has to do with the cultural place that the plant has in society of that group, culture, or religion. Like, let's say we've been doing intellect tree seed for a couple of weeks now, and it required us to go into the roots of Ayurveda, Dhanvantari, the Chakara Samhita, the Chakara Samhita, which is one of the original Ayurvedic books that was written in the 1600s, and actually pull from the roots of Ayurveda the qualities that are considered beneficial for the brain as a nootropic, etc., and then cross-reference those with medical research papers showing the studies on rats and animals that it helps animals who were given a sedative to come out of sedation 2 or 3 times as fast, and to enhance their memory when they're given an amnesiac drug, etc., as a cure for dementia. And then we study the ancient Vedic side of it. We study the names that was given in that group or tradition. This is where the cultural anthropology comes in. Because then we study the language, Jayotoshmati, Malkangani. What do those words mean when you break them down in the language? That means the light time brain plant. And then to break that down into what is the contextual use. That's the oral tradition. And so we have to dig a little bit to find the contextual use. It was utilized to memorize mantras or used for mantrika. So it was used to enhance the memory of the initiate as they studied this tradition. And it's proven as having a contextual use. And then after we study the cultural anthropology, then we study the modern anthropology, how it's used today. It's still used as a nootropic. And then we compare those 5 points as a part of our analysis about the plant medicine. So by studying the oral tradition, the anthropology, the traditional use, the modern use, and the medical use, my students get a full picture of what something is rather than just kind of a snapshot. And then I teach them how it was used in medicine work. So how do we extend that to entheogens? What is intellect tree seed with cannabis? What's the contextual use for that? Now that we know what it does. It helps people to come out of brain fog. It helps them with short-term memory issues. It's used by sadhus in India to connect with Shiva. What's it when it's combined with mushrooms? What is the Ayurvedic profile of the psilocybin mushroom versus the Ayurvedic profile of intellect tree seed? In this system of traditional medicine, is it even compatible? Oh, wow, it's warming, it's astringent, it helps with digestive issues, it helps with gas, it helps with bloating. It also is a cardiotonic. It helps to decrease chances of heart disease. Oh, wow, this might be something that is compatible with the psilocybin mushroom. Oh, it doesn't have an MAOI in it? Okay, that's even more compatible. And so I teach people how to extend their herbalism into entheogenic research by utilizing 5 nexus point technologies. And so it's a school of 5. It's a nickname that we get because I study 5 organ, 5 taste, 5 sense, reality, and generally 5 colors, and 5 points that we're studying. And so it all aligns onto these ancient traditional frameworks of elemental alchemy: earth, water, fire, metal, air. And so I teach people how to look at plants from that perspective, but also to expand it into their disciplinary science. And yeah.
Amazing. So can I ask who are most of these students? Are they herbalists or psychonauts?
PhDs, continuing education, ethnobotany, botany, theology students. I have some students who are Sangomas from South Africa. I have some students who are initiated Buddhists. I have some students who are on their master's degree, psychology. Facilitators who are coming in, drug addiction therapists, doctors. It's from parents with kids to 70-year-olds. It's a wide, diverse community in Divine Master Alchemy, and it's kind of my fun playground because I get to have fun studying with them. It's a peer study community. And so I'll have people share their experiences. I send them the actual herbs in the mail. I let them get hands-on with it, get comfortable with the spirit of the medicine. And then I have them write about it. Like we did a writing essay back in January that was to compare the relationship of serotonin and psilocybin to ebotenic acid and GABA in the Amanita and psilocybin studies. And they were showing that literally, just like serotonin and psilocybin are so molecularly similar, same thing applies to glutamic acid and ibotenic acid and muscimol and GABA. It's like one molecule similar and different. And so we were talking about Radha and Krishna, the blue mushroom and the red mushroom together. What are the properties? What are the alchemies? And has it been used? Yes. If it's been used, then what are the traditional uses of it? And analyzing the red and the blue haoma, utilizing Siberian plant medicine, which we were discussing the relationship between how it's spoken about in Siberia versus how it's spoken about in Japan. Japanese people consider the mushroom, the red Amanita mushroom, a Benutingutaki mushroom, the long-nosed, red-faced goblin mushroom. And there's an entire fantastic story and history about how Yamabushi monks will take the mushroom and grill it and cook it for 2 hours and then make it like sushi and eat it as a delicacy. And then the personality that they become after that is considered a Tingyu, or somebody who has been mushroomed, who can turn into the Buddha and travel all of the different realms, kind of like as a trickster character. And that's one fun part. And then talking about the flying reindeer, how they both have wings, i.e. symbolizing astral travel and tradition, and both have red noses, i.e. one of the symbols of, taking Amanita is the flushing of the nose or the flushing of the face, but also the redness of the mushroom.
Oh my God, so good.
And so we have fun.
This is so fun. I'm curious, your relationship with the entheogenic plants over the years. How has this played into, what it is you speak about and teach about? Like, would you say that it's kind of
It's 100%.
Okay.
It's 100% because I don't take the mushrooms for my own quote unquote healing anymore.
Yeah.
I meditate and I drink tea for that. It's like a moment to moment integrative process for me. I've gotten past needing to take a trip for that. When I do take a trip, it's so I can organize my homework for my students or find out what spirit really wants me to share and increase my knowledge of it. So I use the mushroom as a research tool. And I teach my students how to also utilize it as a research tool, but infinite awareness research, not just our internet, pulling from the ocean of awareness specific things that they might need or that can be useful for them in their spiritual journey as well as their physical journey, and how to integrate that in through research and actually grounding it to something real. So,
I'm so glad you speak about that, because I've shared about that to people as well, where not to say, I'm perfect, I don't need healing, but I don't work with any medicines for specific trauma, blah, blah, blah. It's purely of service as a channel for whatever the fuck I'm incarnated here at this time. I'm like, you know what?
I'm in service to the
use
divine.
me. Yeah, use me.
You know,
and it's amazing.
that's
Like
how
you
I feel.
said, like things that have come through over the years where, you know, even the path I'm on, I denied it for a few years where I was like, there's no way I could talk about psychedelics publicly. Like, no way. I'd been on this path for 30 years and I was like, this is sacred. I'm not going to put anybody at risk. Who am I to talk about? I mean, it took me a few years to even get up the nerve to come out in public. But that came through that experience, you know, and other things with clients or other, you know, like pulling together the pieces of the web and weaving it to just come up with like one little thing that helps someone. So I love that you say this and talk about this and also teach it, because I think, as you mentioned, you know, our world is, especially with, I think of it as like the Instagram world of kind of like self-absorbed narcissism around like everything's wrong and we must be fixing it. And, you know, and then
we need medicine,
drink more ayahuasca
because we're all sick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, you know what? How about put service in front of you for once and see what happens?
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it. You know, like I might take a microdose and go speak and just ask creator to put the words in my mouth that need to be heard by the people. I'm not thinking up here about it. You know, I'm allowing myself to be a channel, you know, real time. And it has nothing to do with trying to be like a public figure or something.
Influencer.
You know, like even on Facebook, like the fact that like my Facebook page transitioned to being public figure, it was kind of curious to me because I was like, well, this will make it easier for me to interact with people instead of being so private. But I prefer to be private as much as I possibly can, because I feel like the bulk of people who are talking about psychedelics are talking about it from a marketing standpoint. They're trying to market a mushroom chocolate. They're trying to market, you know, a tool. And that's why I didn't market my class, is because I wanted to be something that was like a sanctum for healers and a community that was about learning and not just about doing drugs, you know. And there's nothing wrong with doing drugs, but at the same time, people who have the intent of learning are oftentimes so much more passionate when they don't feel this pressure to buy something, you know. And I respect that.
I so respect this path that you're on, what you're teaching and what you're putting out there in the world. Speaking of which, I want to hear about, you know, I'm curious, are you writing a book?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. I'm like, she needs to be writing a book.
A book is coming out. Of course, I'm a better speaker than I am a writer. I'm working on my writing skill. Like I used to be when I was in college. I took like 3,300 master's level English just cause got triple A's in it. It was, I lost that motivation after college because I was writing argumentatively, like MLA format. Like one of my college papers was importing your mocha frappuccino, why middlemen fair trade may not be what you're looking for.
Love the title.
So it has to be something like,
oh my God.
Generally speaking, like I don't want to write a Reader's Digest book for plant medicine. I really want it to be something that is above what we get when we read a book. For me, when I read, I'm a very visual person. And so I like to see the videos. I'll just stop reading and I'll look up a word I don't understand. And so I want to make it fully AI, like embedded, VR embedded, and AR compatible, so that when someone is reading my book, they can take out their phone and scan the QR code and like see the tribe and like see them, you know, doing the practice properly and not have to be, you know what I mean? Like so two-dimensionally disconnected from the actual realness of what it is that I'm teaching. Like when I teach Lotus, for instance, I know how to use the stem, the stamens, the pollen, the seeds, the petals of like 6 different kinds of species of lotus. I want people to be able to see the picture of the lotus and understand like, okay, well, this is how lotus paste is made for mooncakes. This is the qualities that it has. This is what it does when it's combined with psilocybin. This is what it does when it's combined with ayahuasca. This is something that you can use as a paste, as a poultice, you know? And I really want it to be like a acacia tree, you know, because you see the tree, it's like an umbrella. And so I want people to be able to utilize the book as kind of a guide to navigate all these different branches of information. And so I'm working with a couple of graphic designers and specialists to help get this realized as kind of like a gamified format where you can explore the tree, and then also as a book format where you can explore different branches of information related to entheogens and ethnobotanicals and history.
Fun. I know some VR people if you need some.
Sure. I would. I love it.
No, and I'm glad, it's interesting that you said this Reader's Digest, because from what I am seeing out there in the world, a lot of publishers are actually pushing more of these kind of easy how-to handbooks that are kind of made for the masses that are sellable at, let's say, Urban Outfitters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about,
what
right?
I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm trying to be the book that I wanted to read when I was 7. that was like the grail of research about all the things I wanted to nerd out about. And I want to take people as far as I can take them, and then give them a doorway where they can reach out to real experts in the field and like study under them. There are people in this field who are going to want to become a PhD in ethnobotany. And the ethnobotany programs that we have are not geared towards entheogens. They're really geared towards like Kent State, like type really, really straight edge. We don't talk about psychedelics. We don't talk about entheogens. There are going to be people who want to pursue a study of this stuff. And I want to make it possible for them to have a handbook that can function as like a access point to teachers, who are really versed in their field, like James Maffey or, Lama Mike Crowley or Tom Lane, or, like there's so many niche artists in our collective who have good information. I would still like to serve as a bridge for people to connect with their breadth of knowledge and work, because I'm only one person in this constellation of teachers who really have a grasp on their material. And I would like to help open the doors for people to study this stuff professionally if they want to. I think there is a level of professional academic study that can be had, even of spiritual, cultural, and religious stuff connected to entheogens.
Beautiful. Well, we'll have the links, your links right here in the show notes. When you're ready to promote this, whenever it is coming out, call me up. We'll get you back on here to share about it. And yeah,
I have April summer camp actually.
Ooh, tell about that.
And summer camp, you can stay for a week or for a month and come and learn with I've already got 16 students signed up. And I think I added, did you notice that I gave you a discount code?
Oh, let's see. Well, go ahead and talk about it, because we'll take it.
A free class in Aztec philosophy. If you ever want to like really learn like Aztec philosophy, I take you a quarter way through James Maffey's book, Aztec Philosophy, and give you like the entire history of the journey of the deified heart. If that's a tradition or initiation that you feel called to, I walk you through it in that class. And that's a month-long class with like 40 recordings. And so, that's free if you watch this podcast. And 20% off of any classes that you want to take. Like I say, I charge $4 an hour. So my classes generally range $100 per month to the maximum of $600. And $600 does include entheogens, legal entheogens. And what's legal entheogen? A lot of people ask me. Amanita is legal in all 50 states except Louisiana. And ethnobotanicals and sometimes stones. And so if you're interested in summer camp, I'll be talking about my teacher's legacy, which was utilizing a specific kind of Ministerius quartz crystal for inner exploration or as a meditative tool to activate the bioenergetic relationship between stone and human technology. And so that's opening the heart portal or the heart mind. And I'm teaching a class on that from April 15th to May 15th. And the link is in my bio on Instagram.
Oh, okay. Sign me up. I want to join.
Cool.
I'll share that around because that sounds amazing. Wow.
Yeah, if you just want to come and sit in on the class, you're absolutely welcome to come.
And it's quartz. It's not 20 grams.
No, it's quartz. It's not 20 grams. You can take 20 grams if you want to, but that's not what I'm recommending. I'm taking like two or 0. We got to do the mind and heart training first. So.
Acacia, it was so good to have you here. We will share the links. We'll definitely get you back on when your book is out. And I want to thank you so much for this really high integrity work that you're doing out there in the world. The world needs to hear your voice. I know you're kind of on the DL trying to hide out, but this is really amazing knowledge. And I'm so glad that you've come here and shared yourself and mostly shared your heart.
Thank you. And I feel the same. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for providing like a bridge for folks to get out of their preconceived notions and expand their minds into like abundance and healing beyond 5 dry grams. So great job.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.